On this episode of ResiWeek, Savant has a new Breaker Companion module, CEDIA's got a new Leadership and Award event, and making hay from Control 4's price increases. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 174, Collateral Damage.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Daylight, the leading producer of high-quality projection screens worldwide, and by Crestron.
Welcome to ResiWeek. This is your weekly wrap-up of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and today I'm pleased to be joined by the one and only Mitchell Klein. He is the executive director of the Z-Wave Alliance. How are you, sir?
Doing awesome. Hey, great to be back. Love to be here with you guys.
Thank you so much for joining us. And we have Tim Albright. He is the founder of AVNation, filling in for a cancellation today. So he's helping out. How you doing, Timmy?
I am doing fine, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Let's kick this show off right at the top with a really interesting story that comes to us from a residential tech today. And Jeremy Glowacki, a home builder, is offering Savant's HomeKit compatible Breaker Companion modules. If you do not understand what that mouthful means, essentially Savant has debuted Breaker Companion modules, and what they are modules that fit into a standard electrical panel, including panels like the Square D panels that this new home builder is using, and allows those modules to be tied to individual electrical loads throughout the house and throughout the panel. What that means for homeowners is that they have an opportunity to not only monitor their energy usage, but also in the aspect of lighting breakers, be able to control some of those that breaker information directly from the Savant apps. Mitch, I want to start with you on this one. Lighting control has always been one of those retrofit situations. It's always been something where you're changing switches, you're rewiring the basement, you're stripping the house out to get true lighting control in, or you're swapping bulbs to smart bulbs. Both of them pose challenges. Both of them have, to a degree, some sort of limitation in there. When you start looking at smart breakers, which are really just starting to peak, is this something that is going to, I don't want to say revolutionize lighting control, but essentially that? Is this going to make energy management and lighting control really something that is easily retrofittable into any house?
Okay, listen, the first part of it, oh my God, no. You're going to control your lights by turning your breakers on and off? I mean, that's a really clever way of not controlling your lights, let me just say. Okay, I can see a lot of benefits to being able to access your breaker, but for the consumer, let me think of one. Can't really, unless the consumer wants to do his own electrical work in the house. To me, the smart breaker makes more sense in terms of monitoring. You already mentioned that. Okay, that's fine, but you don't need to do that in the breaker, but okay, that could be a good use case. Or to prevent truck rolls. So if you want to be able to remotely reset something, again, not the best way to do it, but it certainly is an option. But to control your lights by turning on and off your breakers, please say that that's not going to happen.
Okay, it's not going to happen.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Tim, what really
Totally
surprised...
by the way.
It's totally going to happen. Tim, what really surprised me about not only this solution, but kind of this drive by Savant, is their commitment to HomeKit.
Mm-hmm.
No one else has really got on board with HomeKit to this level. And Mitch, I'm sure you'll chime in on this at some point.
Yep.
But yeah, I couldn't give you the easy one. Right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, just a smidge. But Savant's had a good tie-in with Apple for a long time. Notwithstanding that, this is really surprising me that they brought this entire Breaker Companion module for HomeKit, that they're doing a lot of their lighting for health and wellness, their Evotech, everything else. Everything is kind of based around HomeKit. No one else is doing that. What drove Savant, who has been, let's be honest, they've kind of been the dark horse the last two or so years with really innovative products, yet they're still tied into HomeKit. What causes that? Where's the benefit there?
Well, first of all, the benefit is the fact that you've got a large ecosystem of products and you have Apple. It doesn't hurt to tie yourself to Apple, but it's also a differentiator. And whether it's a good differentiator or not, I'm not inside Savant, so I can't say, looking at their numbers, but it seems to be a good one, a good fit for them. You look at the other players in the control field, and especially in the residential market. You have Control4, you have Crestron, you've got Savant, you've got the number of other ones. It separates them from the folks that are like, we're going to do it ourselves and we'll tie into other people, being Control4 and Crestron. This puts Savant on the same wavelength, I guess, as other sort of DIYers or do-it-yourselfers, which is the person that gave me that phrase a number of years ago. You've got it gives them a differentiator from making them go down a specific road of, you have to go with Crestron, you have to go with Control4, you have to go with RTI. It gives them a tie-in, and it ties them to Apple, which is never a bad thing when it comes to consumers.
All right, Mitch, I can see you kind of chomping at the bit.
Well, no, I'm just curious as to the comment about a significant ecosystem with HomeKit. I mean, it just appears as though Apple is kind of yawning about that, going, "Yeah, we got HomeKit.
So
yeah,
far.
we got it. Okay."
So far.
So far, will they really go anywhere with it? I don't know, but I'm really glad that someone's paying attention to doing something with the breakers. I happen to know there are some other companies doing some interesting things in terms of connecting circuit breakers to, let's say, the environment, if you will, or the electrical grid, if you will. HomeKit, I don't quite get it, but I think Savant has always been in that camp with Apple, and it makes a whole lot of sense for them and for the dealers. But for a consumer, I still struggle with why I'd want to have access to my circuit breaker from my HomeKit app.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, let's leave that one there before we really go down the rabbit hole. From CE Pro and Jason Knott, why CEDIA created its new leadership and awards event. If you were unaware, haven't been paying attention, CEDIA has announced and launched a leadership conference and awards celebration July 24th and 25th in Chicago. This is going to be held at the Drake in Chicago, and is, essentially moving the award celebration from the first night, I believe, of CEDIA Expo every year, and making it its standalone event, and kind of rolling what was, and I'm going to blank on the name, and everyone will send me hate mail on this, the leadership conference that they held in the spring, and rolling
Business
both.
Exchange.
Thank you, sir.
There we go.
All I was thinking of.
Is this a good time to mention that you're on the board and you're?
Nope, not yet.
I was going to come back to that in a moment.
Thank you.
We'll roll you with the independent press for the moment.
It was leaving when I was coming on, so notwithstanding, they're rolling the Business Exchange into this event and making it a one-stop deal. When you check out the story, there's a great little video clip with Giles there, the engagement man over at CEDIA. Tim, I wanted to come to you on this one. There are a number of leadership events in both the residential and the commercial space. A lot of them are somewhat tied to brands and products and manufacturers. There's only a handful of leadership events, top tier events, that are true leadership events. I think of the NSCA, I think of the Business Exchange. What is the push and the drive that makes integrators want to go to high level leadership type events?
The ones that I've been to, and I've never been to a business exchange. I have been to AVEC and I've been to NSCA's BLC. Both of those events, business leaders, their guard is down. And what I mean by that is the folks it's something about the environment. It's something about the event itself. But folks tend to be more sharing, I guess is the best way to put this. When you're in the trenches and you're doing business on a day-to-day basis, Mitch might be my competitor across the street in St. Louis, but when we're at this event, he's going to share things that pain points or solutions, and I'm going to share them. Right? This is an open exchange. This is where folks can come together and they can share their best practices, share solutions to problems that we all have, and in the format that all of these folks put together, it's a really, really interesting open environment where there's no threatening here, right? I'm not going to steal his trade secrets, because this is a business decision, or this is business advice. And I think that's the thing that makes these really, really unique is, you can go there and you can learn more in 2 or 3 days than you could probably learn on your own in a year or 2 years of making your own mistakes.
Very good. Mitch, one of the big, shall I say, newsworthy sides of this is that they're pulling awards out of Expo and putting it as its own standalone event. Awards kind of seem to be up and down depending who you talk to. Some people are huge fans of manufacturer awards or industry awards. Some people can take it or leave it. What is the big attraction to going through the process, the work involved in submitting for an award, hopefully winning the award, and then what do integrators do with it? How can they leverage that in their day-to-day business? Or is it really just, hey, here's a feather for my cap?
Wow, I can go a lot of places with the whole article, but I'll go with your question. But I would like to touch on the business exchange leadership thing too.
Of course.
In terms of awards, first of all, they're phenomenal. It's a credibility thing, and as an integrator, you take great pride in your work. You put a lot of effort into your work, into your business, into your staff, into your projects. And to win an award is huge. And there's no downplaying that. And if anyone has never submitted or won an award, you just don't get it. It's actually really a fabulous thing for a company to get it. And it's not just good in terms of credibility outside. It's a great way of your staff going, see, I worked hard and I got some recognition. I mean, recognition is huge. You can look through any leadership studies and they will tell you on the hierarchy of needs, acknowledgement in leader is really, really important. And this is a way for the industry to acknowledge you as a really good firm that does really good work. So I think that's really important. In terms of the actual awards ceremony itself, let me first give kudos to those that made a decision to try something new. I will always support trying something new. I'm not so sure I would have done that particular decision on my own, but that's not up for me to necessarily question. What I do worry about is that you've now taken the CEDIA property, the awards, which is a big CEDIA thing. You've taken it away from the CEDIA show. And now you've left it open for someone else to come in and do it at the CEDIA show. To me, I'm concerned about that. Not all the other stuff that you may have heard about. Oh my God, who wants to do a thing in July? And all that stuff, that's not the issue for me. The big question is now what? Because there's a vacuum at CEDIA Expo, and now is there potential for someone else to be named later, I won't mention names, to come in, run awards that are perhaps a little easier to submit for, because the CEDIA awards keep getting more and more difficult every year, and that's probably another good conversation starter right there. Make it a little easier for companies to apply for it and actually win awards at CEDIA, and then ultimately really downplay the CEDIA awards because they used to be the CEDIA Expo awards versus the CEDIA. Anyway, you kind of see where I'm going with that. I'm a little worried about that, to be honest with you. The second piece, if I can keep going on the leadership thing.
Oh, go for it.
And again, not throwing stones. I just, listen, I started them when I was president of CEDIA. I kicked it off. I did the very first, management conference for CEDIA. And I felt that, well, based on my experience with other business owners, that was the area they were lacking. They had the technical skills that was great, but running and growing a business wasn't one of their key strengths. And I still think we have to kind of beat the bushes and drag people to come to these things. So, as I always say, if people don't want to come, then maybe you're doing something wrong. I guess we'll see by tying these to the awards if it works, but dealers don't seem to want this. And the competitive environment has changed significantly enough that now, as a member of a buying group, and last count there were 23 or 24 buying groups, every one of these buying groups is doing that and providing you with business leadership, which is great. And why the hell don't dealers go to these things? Well, I think as a member of a buying group, you are. So there you have it. I'm not so sure the industry needs to put them on. The buying groups are doing it. So
let me ask you this. If the buying groups are doing it and going down that train of thought, do the dealers do integrators have the opportunity to skip those events? i.e., is it that the content is different, or is it that they're going to that buying group conference? Because I've been to some of those buying group conferences. I've sat in some of those meetings, and it's really hard to gauge engagement on those things. And are people sitting through the business training aspect of that event because they want to be there, or is it just it's part of the entire event that they're going to anyways?
Well, lesson number one is they are there. They aren't going to the business exchange, and again, I totally love the folks that put on the business exchange and still can't understand why dealers wouldn't go. But you're already going to the buying group thing. Now, could you skip it? You could, but depending on which side you're on, that event you've already paid to go to that event by being a member of that organization. So there's no separate fee, if you will. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's included in your annual dues, if that's what you want to call them. So people go. Did they learn from it? I don't know. Did they learn from the business exchange? I don't know. But you kind of have to go.
So Tim, let me ask you this. As somebody who's kind of been to a wide variety of things down this line, is it the top 5, top 10%, if even that, of integrators that are actively searching for true, business leadership skills, opposed to just generic, how do I start running my RMR program?
There are two reasons to go to a business leadership exchange, and I think what it is you have folks who genuinely want to learn from each other. But in larger organizations, you also have folks bringing their middle managers and folks, farther down the line, that they're trying to bring up, that they're trying to train, that they're trying to network together and have them learn from somebody other than themselves. Yes, they want them to learn their processes and their thinking, but it also doesn't hurt to expose, your employees to, new ideas, different points of view. So I think what's happening is you have folks who, like Mitch said, they have a great selection. Some of these dealers are members of 2, 3, 4 different buying groups, depending on the product line and depending on the region. So they have a good selection. There's certainly, a case to be made to going to, the CEDIA version as well. The question is timing. The question is time off, because this is not a vacation, and yet it's time away from the office. So you have to also figure in, the lost opportunity cost, which can't be termed, but it just means that you're not in the office, you're not doing business. Yes, you can answer emails and this, that, and the other, but then you're not paying attention and getting the content. So the trade-off here is, yes, you can be away and still do work, but then you're not really focusing and getting the whole point of the conference.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, let's move on to our last story of the day. This comes to us from Residential Systems, making hay from Control4's price increase. This is from my good friend Henry Clifford. If you are a Control 4 dealer, you probably saw this email that went out last Thursday from Control 4 CEO Martin, announcing a U.S. tariff, or not announcing a U.S. tariff, but announcing a global price increase based on the announced U.S. tariffs on imported Chinese goods. He described the change as a 150% increase over the previously announced 10% tariff rate that was implemented earlier this year. As you read through the article, Henry gives some really good oversight. But what I love about this article is halfway down, he gets into really the specifics of what they will be doing at Livewire to address this email in terms of how their design engineer is going to immediately start auditing jobs that are already in process, as well as changing the cost of goods sold and the MSRPs. Their purchasing coordinator is going to stock additional product before this increase comes in play to allow them to maximize on that margin. And they're going to canvass their customers to start explaining to them about this price increase and help them hopefully make a good decision to not be hindered by it. Mitchell, I want to come back to you on this one. Throughout the industry, we all kind of know that these tariffs are coming or have started to roll out. How do we as integrators, manufacturers, how do we as an industry, who is albeit a fairly small part of this massive tariff conversation, how do we manage to deal with this coming and making sure that our consumers know what's going on?
Yeah, we are collateral damage, so to speak. You know, whatever your political beliefs are, it looks like tariffs are going to be coming at us from every which way. And I know manufacturers can only absorb just so much, and I know a lot of the companies are looking at moving their manufacturing elsewhere. But there are some things you can do as a dealer, and number one is you got to be careful about just buying up inventory, because that can kill your cash flow. So generally, I think what Henry's talking about makes sense. I would get in touch with those customers that you've already contracted with, let them know about the price increase and see if they'd like to procure the products now and have them basically finance the inventory for you. That may not work for everyone, because if it's not in your contract, that price increases will be passed through. You know, some customers will go, gee, that's too bad, suck it up. But some customers might just say, yeah, that really kind of sucks, and we'll be happy to give you a little more advance payment, and then you can then warehouse at their financing, the price increases. But the reality is you're going to get hit with some. So you need to go to one of those industry business exchanges, leadership conferences, and help to understand finance a little bit better, to see what's happening with your cash flow and with your profit and loss, and see those areas where you could perhaps burden yourself with some of the cost increases, and perhaps pass price increases on, but buy products at the lower price to offset those things that you couldn't, if that kind of makes sense, if you hear what I'm saying. So those are the things that you can really do. And of course, Henry's absolutely right. Change your costs immediately and start tracking it that way. So those are the couple of pointers I would throw out there. And then go out and vote at some point.
That's what you call a callback, kids, when you're referencing a previous. Very well.
Yeah, right. Okay, go vote.
Thanks, Tim. Are you back in school today?
Am I back in school? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Tim, reading through this article, as Mitch pointed out, and obviously as Henry wrote, there are some really good things in there. Is there anything that Henry missed, or is this something that, like, is there a marketing aspect of this that dealers and integrators need to be careful of? Because it's not just going to be likely Control 4. It's going to be
it'll be all of them.
Pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
Some I know I've talked with a couple manufacturers who are going to eat it for the first little bit, and then they're going to roll it out to hopefully give their dealers more time.
You're going to see that in all your networking gear and all your connectors, and you're going to feel nickeled and dimed over the next year or so.
Oh yeah, it's going to be brutal.
What I find interesting is that it's just now coming out from Control 4, right? And I don't mean that as a slight to Control 4 or to the residential side, but we've been covering this from the commercial side for well over a year. And when the first round happened, there were a number of primarily commercial exclusive manufacturers who increased their rates because their rates were increasing. And then we had the second round, which some more. To Matt's point, there were some manufacturers who were eating the first bit of it. Now they can't absorb those costs, and they are passing those on. There's two things though for this. First, there was a number of manufacturers who were able to get around this because the majority of their manufacturing was done in Mexico. If you've paid attention to the news in the last week or so, those manufacturers are going to be hit here in the not too distant future if the administration follows through on a more recent announcement. That means that pretty much any AV you buy in this space from top to bottom will have some sort of increase. But the marketing side is important because regardless of how you look at the percentages in the last election, somewhere around 50% of the U.S. did vote for this administration. So how you couch that is important. You don't want to alienate a full half of your clients. Something interesting that came out from the commercial side, and I'm going to steal it from our buddy Jeremy Caldera, who stole it from his manufacturer. It was a LED manufacturer, and Jeremy deals in commercial side. He has a Fortune 100 company, and they were putting in a large LED display, and the LED manufacturer sent Jeremy the quote, and it was all the things you would expect, this, that, and the other. And at the very bottom, there was an extra line, and it said tariff charge. There was no political statement with that. It simply was letting him know that because of the tariffs in place, this is the amount he was paying more.
Mm-hmm.
So he took it, and he did the exact same thing to his commercial client. Again, not a political statement in any way, shape, or form, but understand my costs are increasing, so your costs are going to increase. And yes, Mitch, to Mitch's point, there are some contracts in place that if your costs increase, you just got to eat it. But in the proposal process here, where in residential, there's a lot of times there's back and forth, and I don't know if I want to do it, and this, that, and the other, just like there is in commercial.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of dealers have in place that this quote is good for 30 days. When those 30 days have passed, or they start changing things around, you have the opportunity at that point to say, you know what, our costs are increasing. This is the cost increase. Up to you, obviously. If you don't want to just to point out the fact that because of the tariffs, then you have the option of wrapping it into rolling it into the cost of the actual equipment.
Yeah, can you imagine now? Dealers have to look at their contracts and add a tariff clause to their contracts.
Yep.
I mean, honestly, you'd be crazy not to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a very interesting time. All right, gentlemen, on that note, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. Mitch, if people want to connect with you, learn more about the Z-Wave Alliance, where can they do that?
Send me an email, mitch@zwavealliance.org. That's Z-Wave Alliance. Or you can always tweet at me at Mitchell_Klein, Klein.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here, my friend. Tim, as always, thanks for joining us. If people want to connect with you, learn more about AVNation, where can they do that?
You can tweet at me at TD. Tim, give it all right on the Twitters.
Excellent. Thank
you
so
much. And
much.
I'll do exactly that, Tim.
I bet you will.
You know what, Mitch? Not for the next week. You won't. Mitch is a Boston Bruins fan. And
Go Bruins! And by the way, I purposely did not wear the hat or the shirt. Just I didn't want to offend my friends here, but
well, at least you're not wearing the Stanley Cup one yet. So
no, he's going to bring you one of those next week.
I know. I'll have to wear it. So.
All right, gentlemen, thank you again so much for being here. For myself, if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter at Matty Scott and pretty much every other social platform. But more importantly, please stop by avnation.tv, where you find this show, as well as a wide variety of our other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take out a moment to check out our supporters. We ask that you check them out as well because they support us. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.